In this episode of Going for Green, Earning from Conservation, an organisation in the Tsavo area of Kenya is helping the local community earn from carbon credits by preserving trees. Powering an island, Mageta Island, deep in Lake Victoria, is benefiting from off-grid solar and wind power. Strewn all over the coast, these coconut husks are turning out to be a hot, burning green fuel. And a day for the ocean. Groups take part in an annual ocean cleanup exercise.
In Tsavo, Kenya, there is a high level of rural poverty. This has seen the local population turn to unsustainable practices to gain income, having a large effect on tree populations and the biodiversity.
We were concerned by the richness of the wildlife compared to the poverty of the people. When you have a very sort of rich biodiversity, you also have high levels of poverty as well, and those two are at dichotomy with each other.
Long dry spells mean that the local communities lack water for agriculture and have to find alternative means of survival.
The Voi River used to only not flow for 2, 3, 4 weeks a year. Now it barely flows. With the river not flowing means that groundwater levels have gone down, which means that the trees will die off and the ground desiccates, which means that what land was marginal at best anyway for farming is now unusable.
Wildlife Works employs 350 community members in various areas, all as a part of environmental conservation.
We started out at Wildlife Works with half a dozen rangers, and that force is built up to nearly 100 today. And their job is to stop human-wildlife conflict, so to work with the communities to mitigate any human-wildlife conflict problems.
Our mandate is to protect the trees. And you cannot protect the trees without animals. Where I am now, we have around 126 rangers, 85 are patrolling within the project area, others are patrolling on the hills, and others are patrolling within the community. Since we introduced the issue of the carbon, we employed youths from this area that surrounds these forests. The issue of the charcoal burning actually has gone down drastically.
Wildlife Works is working with the local community to provide an alternative income using the international carbon market through carbon offsetting.
Carbon credits is not a bubble that's going to burst. It is a good, viable way of protecting forests and empowering people in developing countries to look after their own environment by rewarding them for their actions.
This is how carbon offsetting works. The carbon on the piece of land is measured. This is done by measuring the amount of trees, shrubs, and grass. The carbon contained in this vegetation is measured. Below ground carbon in roots is also measured. This is weighed against land that is already destroyed. This will give you the amount of carbon being taken out of the air by the plants. An organization anywhere in the world will then fund the conservation project to offset their own carbon footprint by buying credits through the carbon market. This works to cancel off global emissions.
So we're happy because when they buy the carbon credits, it's one way of compensating. We are doing conservation and then they're paying us.
The revenue generated from this is then divided by Wildlife Works and split among the community, benefiting them for their conservation efforts.
It goes to the people that own the land, the rest goes to the community who live outside of the project area, and the other third goes into those 350 jobs of the people that work in Wildlife Works.
The organization runs the carbon offset through the Kasigeo Corridor project, which was certified and validated in 2010.
And we were the first double validated carbon project in the world. These are the two standards which make sure that we are quantifying how much carbon we have correctly and that the impacts we're having on the biodiversity and on the communities that live in the project area are positive, and we're carrying out our business in a transparent and fair way. not money for nothing. It's not handout money as well, which is very important. It's actually money that the communities have earned through their positive actions.
The achievement of the organization and the community in conservation and reduction of unsustainable practices are evident in the local ecosystem.
Most of the issues of the charcoal burning has completely gone down.
The communities understand that to make charcoal inside the project accounting area would damage their potential for revenue. So they've made a decision based on the fact that they are earning money to not burn charcoal. When we first started, we were taking out between 6,000 and 7,000 snares a year. That numbers dropped dramatically, and in a year now it's less than 500 snares are taken out, which means commercial bushmeat hunting has significantly decreased.
I'm very much proud of the achievement I've got at the moment. The charcoal burning has gone almost to zero because we are not seeing any smoke, we are not arresting people. We used to have people encroaching to the forest, but currently we are not having those cases since the introduction of the carbon.
Africa is a vast continent, and its size poses some challenges, especially when it comes to transport and energy.
When you look at Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, you will find that 70% of the population do not have access to electricity.
Many remote areas on the continent have been without electricity due to access. One such place is Mageta Island on Lake Victoria. An hour and a half from the mainland, grid power is a huge challenge.
When Stimaco started its operations, it was moving to places where, apart from supplying the electricity, they were able to monitor the systems from the office. Mageta Island is, when the system was installed, it has been working about 3 years. When Stimaco came, it surveyed the island, realized the kind of power sources that the community had, the kerosene, lamps, the generators, and some people were using spotlights. After checking the potential of doing the clean power system, they came up with the wind power and the solar system.
Stimaco uses two renewable sources of electricity, solar and wind. The solar generator system uses large solar PV panels that create direct current. The large generators turn this into alternating current for household use. Wind-powered generators harness the energy in air currents. The currents turn the propeller. The propeller turns a shaft. This shaft is connected to a gearbox that turns a second high-speed shaft. The high-speed shaft, in turn, spins a generator. The generator has magnets of opposite polarity. When spun inside copper coils, they produce electricity.
People are able to operate barber shops. They are able to light their houses major part of the night, throughout the night. Their music systems are working 24 hours as long as there is power, and they are able to service it.
I had my own. I had a battery and a solar and an inverter. So at first I was using that. It could not sustain my work. Before I switched to the steamer, the generator. So at first I was using that. They always started at 9:30 to 10. Here we arrive at early as 7. So we wanted power. The moment we reach, we find power is on.
When it comes to systems like these, installed in remote areas, affordability is key. Stimaco have found the perfect balance.
Stimaco, in a day I can use 100 to 120, 130. Morning until I leave. And when I leave, at least I can still have some credit in my account. I only offer phone charging and I shave, only that. And then the system here I use to entertain my customers.
The payment system offered by Stimaco is simple, efficient, and easy to use.
For one to be a customer in the first place, they have to have access to a mobile phone. The mobile phone must be able to get access to a network. This network will enable it to do the payment, the cash that they will be remitting. The turnaround time for the turn on or the switch on depends on the power of the network. But if the network is good, it comes immediately. If there is poor network, it can take 5 minutes, but the delay will depend on the network. In the system, we have a communication device, and within the system, we have relays that relay the power to the smart meter. So the smart meter will show the amount of electricity that is used. When they are off by mistake and there is money, we are able to detect and switch it on. So they are able to recharge their account at the right time when they need the power.
Off-grid power systems have their challenges, the biggest being distance.
We are talking about the efficiency in the running of power. The longer the line, the less they will get because there will be power loss in the process. So we want people to be as close as possible. That is around 250 meters, but we can go up to 400 meters. Or else, if somebody is going far than 250 meters, we put what we call a sub-hub, where we transmit the power to the sub-hub. Then from the sub-hub, we again extend the lines to other customers.
The fact that once installed, the system has unlimited energy from nature has impressed the local residents, and it makes them proud.
The reason why I'm saying that it may be better is because the power comes from the sun. We are not paying for the sun. The power will come from the wind. We are not paying for the wind. It's just the initial investment and maintenance that will have costs.
Did you know that 1 megawatt of wind energy can offset about 2,600 tons of carbon dioxide?
As more people move to cities in Africa from rural areas, the demand for charcoal grows with them. Charcoal accounts for about 60% of Africa's energy needs. Most of this charcoal is illegal, causing long-term effects in lost forest cover.
We had gone to Takaungu, a small village on Mombasa Malindi Road, to visit my wife's relatives and found her grandma cooking in a house which was full of smoke. I realized we have to do something about all the smoke in the rural villages. We saw a lot of coconut waste lying idle in the farms. I started doing some research on the internet, and I discovered we could actually make briquettes out of the coconut waste.
The coast region of Kenya is littered with waste coconut husks.
So we also discovered that we could actually save trees by making our coconut briquettes from sustainable means.
In order to make use of coconut husk lying idle on farms and roadsides, Kencoco have trained women groups on the carbonization process.
We've trained women to carbonize coconut husks at farm level using drum kilns. So we can get about 100 women all doing 100 kilos every week, which gives us about a ton every day to make our coconut briquettes.
Any dry organic matter can be carbonized. When put in a drum, the matter is lit on fire. This process uses up oxygen. The drum is then covered to stop the inflow of oxygen. The matter continues burning without burning up completely due to low oxygen levels. This creates char or carbon matter.
We also collect charcoal fines from charcoal dealers. About 10% of all charcoal is wasted at the dealer level. We collect all that, bring it to the factory, and we crush it into a fine powder. And then we mix it in a mixer and bind it with the binder and extrude it from the machine. And then we put it in the greenhouse, which we call a hothouse, because it has higher temperature. So it takes about 3 days before it dries.
At Kencoco, they cannot produce enough charcoal to cope with the demand. Its popularity is growing due to the environmental and health benefits.
Wood charcoal is usually very, very light. So as it burns, it emits smoke, and most of the smoke is harmful There is sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide. We compress the char into a harder, denser material which doesn't emit any smoke and has less carbon monoxide emissions. Our charcoal briquettes actually last between 2.5 to 3 hours. So it has a high temperature also, and because it's compressed, it lasts longer.
The charcoal production from trees is government controlled and attracts a lot of costs. The coconut briquettes have an advantage as they are not subject to this.
First of all, I think the coconut husk is cheaper. So when we convert it into char, it's cheaper. And there's a lot of expenses involved in making wood charcoal and transporting it to the consumer. That increases the price of the wood charcoal. Our briquettes don't require licenses to transport. So we're actually able to make our price cheaper.
And hotels are their biggest client, requiring more than Ken Coco can produce.
We use them in grilling because it doesn't have that smoke. Because of the little smoke it produces, you get the flavor of the lobster, still fresh from the sea. You are conserving a lot in the environment. 3, it's cheap, very cheap.
As well as having an impact in commercial spaces, the briquettes are also having an impact in homes.
Back home, I had been using charcoal and firewood. I was using about 4 bags per month. So when they convinced me that the briquettes could burn for at least 2 to 3 hours, the first time I picked a packet and went home and tried it. And instead of using 2 kilos that I normally used, I used only 1 kilo to do all my cooking for that particular day. I'm more comfortable cooking around my children. It's a good thing, because they learn when I'm cooking.
Oceans are the lifeblood of our planet, covering nearly 3/4 of the Earth and holding 97% of its waters. Oceans produce half of the oxygen and absorb most of the carbon in the atmosphere. About half of the world's population lives on coastal zones, many depending on the oceans for their survival. But the oceans are suffering, choking from over-harvest and tons of waste that wash into them every day. The International Coastal Cleanup Day is set aside to bring awareness to this problem.
Last year, 2015, nearly 1 million people from over 100 countries participated, and we collected approximately 8 million kilograms of plastic and other waste.
Most of the waste comes from landfills that wash into the oceans, waste that ends up in the rivers, washing down from the land, and ocean-going vessels that dump waste while at sea.
And what's happening in effect is all of that plastic is breaking down from bigger, larger pieces into smaller pieces over time.
When plastic is discarded carelessly, it finds its way into the rivers. It is then washed downstream onto the oceans. Due to the heat from the sun, friction from other materials, and water currents, these plastics break down over time. They eventually become microplastics. These microplastics move down to the seabed and eventually form a layer of microplastic, finding their way into aquatic plants and life. These also end up in the systems of sea life, poisoning them slowly from the inside. These fish and other sea life will eventually end up on our plates.
Imagine a whale opening its huge mouth to take in thousands of liters of water to get the algae or the krill or plankton in the water. Of course a plastic bag is going to go in, or a lighter or a toothbrush or some plastic bottles. And what would happen to the digestive system? It would block up. The animal would actually die out of starvation. Turtles are not as protected as we would like to think they are. They're actually very under threat. And in some places of the world they're endangered and they're threatened to extinction.
So this now, when you look at the global scale, we're looking at a serious threat to our ocean biodiversity, a serious threat to all of our species, and especially these iconic species, sea turtles, dolphins, whales.
It is these harmful results that inspire individuals, groups, and organizations to participate in the International Coastal Cleanup Day. However, with this comes a set of challenges.
the biggest challenge is the transport, logistics of getting kids out of their schools or out of their villages, because you can imagine the geographic difference between someone living by the coast but not really having access to a daily beach site. So there's a big disconnect between what's in the ocean and you living by the coast, what you know about what's in the ocean. International Coastal Cleanup is always the third Saturday of September, so the date is not fixed, but the fact that it is on a weekend is fixed because it is targeting families, it is targeting school groups, it is targeting volunteers who have maybe a busy schedule, but on a certain weekend in this time of the year, they can actually come and give back to the ocean.
On ICC Day, all kinds of unusual items are found. Commonly, these are plastics, car tires, building materials, and one of the biggest of these is flip-flops.
Some years ago, we even had a dhow, a trading dhow, had washed up all of its cargo, and so the beach was covered in tons of plastic bags. And that was an effort that took us 6 weeks, the whole community working together, all of the Watamu school kids, all of us cleaning the beach for 6 weeks to clear that.
Once all the plastic is collected, it has to be disposed of efficiently to ensure it does not find its way back into the ocean.
We have a plastic recycling centre that is processing all of that plastic waste, which then goes to the recycling industries where it's turned into other plastic products. So that's reducing the amount that goes to landfills.
So this is the highlight of today, that we recognize that there's a lot of rubber waste in our ocean ecosystem and we have a lot of PET bottle waste. But these are the highest consumed items in our households: footwear and drinking containers. You get to understand these are the fastest moving items in today's society.
The biggest challenge to the ocean is actually people living on land in cities that are far from the ocean. All the waste that is disposed of carelessly that finds its way into rivers and streams eventually end up in the ocean. The challenge, however, is that inland communities are not aware of the damage they cause.
First of all, they're not exposed to the problem. They don't understand who it's affecting. They don't see the victims, the marine life itself. They don't see our fishermen community being affected by lower catches and more waste in their nets or in their traps rather than marine life that they are after.
It is critical that we all get involved in every little way in ensuring that our beaches and oceans are free of litter.
You have to understand, beach sand itself is made out of two matters, organic and inorganic material. So more and more as you get to know more about the beach ecosystem itself, you start to identify with the inorganic materials that are man-made, like waste. More and more as you visit the beach, you get to put your foot down and say, I don't want to go to a dirty beach. But you can also change that around and say, I want to go to more dirty beaches and have a positive impact on it and raise more awareness about the dirty on the beach being man-made and taking that away from time to time. It's good to keep your own trash in your bag when you visit the beach and picnic, but to spend a few more minutes and fill up a basket, now that's rewarding for a beachgoer, don't you think?
Make a water filter. Take a funnel-shaped bottle, cut off the bottom, tie a piece of cloth tightly round the mouth of the bottle. When upside down, put some charcoal to almost the shoulder of the bottle. Put a layer of fine, clean sand. On top of this, put a layer of small rocks. Add another layer of sand and another of small rocks. Put a piece of foam on top of all of this. Place the bottle in a container so that it balances on its neck. Filter your water.